He had lived in the house for years, but now it felt emptier than ever. The walls, once filled with laughter and conversation, now only reflected silence. Every morning he would wake up and look at the empty side of the bed, and a wave of sadness would wash over him. He missed her more than words could ever express. Each room reminded him of her presence, but also of her absence. The kitchen still had the faint smell of her perfume from years ago, and the living room carried the sound of memories that were no longer there. He moved through the house slowly, touching objects that she had once held, hoping to feel her presence. The pictures on the wall showed smiles that seemed to mock him now. He could not escape the memories no matter how hard he tried. He had tried to keep himself busy, but everything felt hollow. Friends visited sometimes, but he often found it hard to speak with them. Their words of comfort felt distant and empty. He wanted to hear her voice again, just one more time. He wanted to see her smile one more time. He wanted to tell her how much he loved her, but the opportunity was gone. The nights were the hardest. The quiet of the house seemed to press in on him. He would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining her walking through the door. Sometimes he would think he saw her shadow, but when he turned around, the room was empty. One evening, as he sat in the living room staring at the fire, he heard a faint whisper. At first he thought it was the wind moving through the trees outside, but then he heard it again, clearer this time. It sounded like her name spoken softly. He froze in his chair, straining to listen. He told himself it was impossible. She was gone. There was no reason for anyone to be calling her name. He checked the house, walking from room to room, but no one was there. The house was as empty as ever except for him. He sat back down and tried to calm his racing heart. He told himself he was imagining things. He poured himself a cup of tea and sat back by the fire. But the feeling of being watched lingered. The whispers returned in different places. Sometimes by the window, sometimes near the bookshelf where she used to sit. He could feel a chill in the air, even though the fire was warm. He tried to ignore it, thinking it was just his mind playing tricks on him. Days passed and the whispers grew more distinct. They came when he was alone and when he was not expecting them. Sometimes they seemed to be guiding him to certain parts of the house. He noticed objects slightly moved from their usual places. A chair that had been pushed under the table was now pulled out. A book he had left on the couch was now on the floor. Small things that did not make sense, but gave him a strange feeling. He began to keep a journal. Every incident was written down. The time, the place, and what he had felt. He wanted to make sense of it all. He wanted to find a reason for these strange occurrences. The nights became more restless. The whispers seemed to call him to the attic where he rarely went. He avoided it for weeks, but curiosity grew. One night, he decided to face it. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking under his weight. The attic smelled of old wood and dust. He turned on the light and looked around. Nothing seemed out of place, but the feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. He called her name softly, hoping to hear a response, but the attic stayed silent. He sat down on an old chair, feeling the weight of memories pressing down on him. He remembered the times they had spent in this house, the plans they had made, the dreams that were now shattered. Tears filled his eyes, but he did not try to stop them. The whisper came again, soft and clear. It was as if she was right there in the room with him. He listened carefully, trying to catch the words. His heart ached with longing and confusion. He wanted to believe that it was really her. He wanted to hold on to the hope that she had somehow come back to him. But he also feared that he might be losing his mind. He stayed in the attic for hours, listening, hoping, praying. Eventually, he fell asleep in the chair, exhausted from the emotions that had overwhelmed him. He woke up to the first light of morning. The whispers had stopped, but the feeling lingered. He knew something had changed inside him. Could not explain it, but he felt a connection, a presence that was more than memory. He started to notice small things during the day. A flower that had been on the table was now slightly tilted. A photograph seemed to catch his eye in a different way. The house felt alive with memories and traces of her. He began to speak to her as if she were there, telling her about his day, his thoughts, his regrets. It brought him comfort, even though he knew she was gone. He decided to spend more time in the places where he had felt her presence. The living room, the kitchen, the attic. He cleaned the rooms, arranged the objects, and slowly made the house feel like a home again. He realized that he could not bring her back, but he could honor her memory and the love they had shared. Each whisper, each movement of objects, each small sign was a reminder that she had been there and that love could leave traces that linger. He did not know if the whispers would continue, but he no longer feared them. He welcomed them as a connection to the life he had lost. Over time, he felt a sense of peace in the house. The memories no longer hurt as much. They reminded him of the love they had shared and the moments that had made their life together special. He continued to live in the house, feeling her presence in small ways and cherishing each sign. The loneliness remained, but it was no longer unbearable. He learned to live with it, carrying her memory in his heart while facing each day with quiet strength. He realized that grief was a journey, and that sometimes the people we love leave messages in ways we do not expect. He understood that life would continue, and that he could find moments of joy even after loss. He accepted the whispers, the signs, and the memories as part of his life. And in that acceptance, he found a fragile but real peace. After the first whispers, life continued, but nothing felt the same. He would walk through the house and glance at places she had once touched or sat. The kitchen table still had her cup left from years ago, and he would run his fingers over the rim, imagining her sitting there smiling at him. The whispers came. At strange times, soft and barely audible, but enough to make him stop and listen. They seemed to appear when he was alone, never when there was anyone else in the house. Objects moved without explanation. A book would be on the floor, though he remembered placing it neatly on the shelf. The chair in the corner would face a different direction. The air would shift suddenly, a cold draft passing through the room as though someone had walked by. At first he tried to rationalize everything, blamed the wind, the house settling, or his mind playing tricks. But the events became harder to ignore. He began noticing patterns. The whispers seemed to call him to certain rooms. He could not explain why, but he felt drawn to them. The basement was the first place that made him uneasy. He had avoided it for years, storing old belongings and rarely visiting. One evening, he went down the steps slowly, each one creaking under his weight. The air was damp and smelled of old wood. He turned on the light, but everything seemed normal. He called her name softly, just in case, and for a moment felt a chill run through him. The whispers did not come that time, but the feeling of being watched lingered. The next day, while making tea in the kitchen, he heard it again. A soft sound, like her name, almost a sigh, drifting from the corner where the pantry stood. He froze, listening carefully. He wanted to call out, but was afraid he might break down completely. He decided to follow the sound, walking slowly around the pantry and peering inside. Nothing was there. Only the familiar shelves, cans, and jars lined up neatly. He took a deep breath and tried to shake off the fear. Days passed, and the whispers returned more frequently. Sometimes they would sound like a word, other times just a soft murmur that made the hairs on his neck stand up. The house felt alive in a way he had never experienced before. He began keeping a more detailed journal. Each incident, each whisper, each movement of an object, he wrote down carefully. He noted the time, the place, the feeling he experienced. He wanted to understand if there was a message or a reason behind it all. He started speaking aloud too. Telling her about his day and asking questions he had wished he could ask while she was alive. Sometimes he felt a response, a shift in the air, or a slight movement of objects. He began to believe that she was trying to communicate in her own way. His friends noticed the change in him. He seemed more alert, more aware, though quieter. He did not mention the whispers. Fearing they would think he was losing his mind, he spent hours alone, sitting in the living room or walking through the house, listening for the soft sounds and following the subtle signs. One evening he decided to explore the attic again. He climbed the stairs slowly, feeling the old wood creak beneath his feet. The smell of dust and old belongings filled his nose. He turned on the light and looked around, noting every object, every shadow. He sat in an old chair and waited, eyes closed, trying to sense her presence. After some time he heard it, a soft whisper, her name, drifting from the far corner of the attic. He opened his eyes slowly and scanned the room. There was nothing there but boxes and old furniture. His heart raced as he tried to make sense of it. He reached out to touch an old trunk and felt a chill pass through his hand. The whispers came again, clearer this time, almost like a voice speaking directly to him. He realized he could not ignore it any longer. He spent hours in the attic, listening, waiting, and trying to understand. The experience was exhausting, but he felt a strange connection growing stronger with each visit. He started to notice other signs. A photograph that had been on the mantelpiece now faced a different direction. A chair he had left pushed in was now pulled out. Small things, almost imperceptible, but they made him feel that she was still around, guiding him, leaving traces of her presence. He began to feel less alone. The house that had once been filled with sorrow and emptiness now had a presence that comforted him. He no longer feared the whispers, but welcomed them, feeling that they were a connection to her memory. He started talking to her more openly, sharing his thoughts and feelings, and even asking questions about things he could not understand. Some nights he would sit in the living room for hours, feeling the gentle touch of a breeze, as if she were walking past. The events became a part of his life. He did not know if they were real or the workings of his mind, but he did not care. They brought him peace. The whispers guided him to places he had avoided, to memories he had not faced. They helped him remember moments he had almost forgotten. Slowly he began to feel more connected to his life and to the love he had lost. He started to take care of the house again, cleaning rooms, arranging objects, and making the space feel alive. Each action felt like a conversation with her, a way to honor her memory and presence. He realized that the grief that had consumed him for so long was slowly transforming into something different. The whispers and signs were helping him heal, reminding him that love does not end with death, but leaves traces that linger and guide those left behind. He embraced the changes in his house and in himself. The loneliness was still there, but it was softer, more manageable. He had found a way to live with the memories, the whispers, and the presence that reminded him of her. He learned to appreciate the small things, the subtle signs, and the moments that made him feel connected. He did not know what the future held, but he was no longer afraid. He had discovered a new way to live with loss, finding comfort in the presence that seemed to surround him at every turn. The house was no longer just a place of sorrow, but a space of connection, memory, and quiet hope. He continued to follow the whispers, document the signs, and speak to her, knowing that in some way she was still with him, guiding him, comforting him, and reminding him that love never truly disappears. He began to wonder if there was more to the whispers than just memories and longing. Each sound, each movement in the house felt intentional, as if guiding him toward something he needed to find. He decided to start looking more closely at every corner, every room, every object. He remembered things about the house he had forgotten, little notes, letters, and gifts she had left behind. He had never taken the time to look at them closely. One rainy afternoon, he began going through drawers and boxes, careful to handle each object with care. In a small box, he found letters she had written to him, but never sent. Reading them, he felt her thoughts, her worries, her love, and her humor. Tears filled his eyes as he held the fragile pages, feeling closer to her than he had in years. There was something different about this experience. It was not just sadness, it was understanding, a connection that was growing stronger. He realized that she had left pieces of herself all around the house for him to find. It was as if she wanted him to know her even after she was gone. The whispers continued, guiding him to different rooms, to places he had not thought of. He went to the basement, the attic, and even the garden. Each place held memories and small surprises, traces of her presence. In the garden, he found the flowers she had planted, blooming despite the neglect. He remembered the afternoons they had spent together tending to them, laughing and sharing stories. The garden became a place of comfort, a reminder that life continued and that love could grow even after loss. He started to explore old albums and photographs. Each image brought back a flood of memories, some joyful, some painful. He began to understand the depth of their life together, the choices they had made, the dreams they had shared. It was more than just remembering. It was reconnecting with her spirit. One evening, he decided to record his thoughts, speaking to her as if she were there. He told her about the discoveries he had made, the letters, the objects, the flowers, and the whispers. Speaking aloud brought him a sense of relief and clarity. He felt lighter, as if some of the grief had lifted. The whispers seemed to respond in their own way. Soft sounds, movements of objects, and changes in the air. They were subtle, but unmistakable. He began to realize that these signs were helping him heal, teaching him to accept her absence while feeling her presence. Nights became more bearable. He could sleep with less fear, with less emptiness pressing down on him. He no longer felt trapped in sorrow. The house, which had once seemed so lonely, now felt alive with memories and signs of her love. He began to document everything in more detail, keeping track of the whispers, the movements, and the objects. He wanted to understand if there was a pattern, a message, a reason behind it all. The more he documented, the clearer it became that these occurrences were intentional, guiding him in ways he could not fully understand yet. Friends began to notice a change. He was no longer withdrawn, though he was still quiet and reflective. He spoke about memories with warmth and detail, though he never mentioned the whispers. They could see the healing that was taking place, even if they did not understand how. He started to visit the rooms where he felt her most, spending hours in the living room, the kitchen, the attic, and the garden. Each visit was a ritual, a way of connecting with her, remembering her, and understanding the life they had shared. He even began to leave little notes, objects, or flowers in places where he felt her presence, as if responding to her messages. The feeling of being guided grew stronger. The whispers seemed to lead him to certain objects or letters he had missed before. Sometimes he would find a note tucked away in a drawer, other times an object that had been hidden beneath other items. Each discovery brought a mix of sorrow, joy, and understanding. He realized that the house itself was a messenger, filled with her traces, her memories, her love. It was teaching him to see beyond the grief, to understand that love never truly disappears. One day, while exploring the attic, he discovered a small box hidden behind old furniture. Inside were letters, photographs, and a small voice recorder. The letters were personal, filled with thoughts and feelings she had never shared. The photographs showed moments he had forgotten. The recorder contained her voice, speaking softly, sharing memories, and expressing love. Hearing her voice after all those years brought tears that he could not hold back. The whispers, the signs, and the objects had all led him to this moment. It was a revelation, a gift that helped him understand her more deeply than he ever had while she was alive. He spent days going through the contents of the box, listening, reading, and remembering. The experience brought clarity and peace. He felt her presence more strongly than ever, not as a haunting, but as a comfort, a guide, a source of strength. He began to understand that the whispers were a way for her to reach him, to help him heal, to show him that love transcends absence. He continued to document everything, keeping a detailed record of the discoveries and the experiences. The journal became a companion, a way to track his journey and reflect on the connection he had found. He began to write letters back to her, speaking about his life, his thoughts, and his feelings. Though she could not respond in words, he felt her presence in the small signs and movements that continued to guide him. Each day became a balance between memory and living, between sorrow and acceptance. He learned to cherish the moments of connection and to allow himself to grieve when necessary. The house, once a place of emptiness, became a sanctuary. The whispers, the objects, the letters, and the recordings were reminders that love endures. He no longer felt the crushing weight of loss, but a gentle presence that guided him forward. The experiences taught him patience, awareness, and the importance of memory. He realized that the connection he had with her was not broken, only transformed. The house became a living memory, each corner holding stories and signs of her love. The whispers continued, sometimes faint, sometimes clear, but always a reminder that he was not truly alone. Over time, he began to feel ready to face the world outside the house. He could leave the rooms where he had felt her presence and still carry the connection with him. The whispers and signs had taught him that love could guide, heal, and comfort even in absence. He felt a quiet strength, a sense of readiness for life beyond grief. The journey had been long, emotional, and sometimes frightening, but it had also been beautiful. He learned that even in loss, there could be guidance, presence, and love. He carried the lessons forward, knowing that her memory would always be a part of him, and that the whispers had shown him a way to continue living while honoring the past. He had started to feel that the whispers were not just random, but leading him to something important. Each day he felt more connected to the signs, the movements of objects, and the soft sounds that seemed to come from nowhere. One morning he found himself drawn to the attic again. The small box he had discovered earlier had been moved slightly, as if inviting him to open it once more. Inside, there were more letters and photographs, some he had not noticed before. The letters spoke of dreams, fears, and thoughts she had never shared. They were deeply personal, filled with love, concern, and advice for him, even though he had not asked. He read them slowly, letting the words sink in, feeling her presence through every sentence. He realized she had left them intentionally for him to find in time, guiding him through grief and helping him understand what had been hidden from him. He found one letter that described something that had puzzled him for years. She had written about a secret she had been keeping, something that explained her last days in a way he had never known. His hands trembled as he read her words. The whispers returned, soft and insistent, as if urging him to pay attention. He went through the letter again and again, trying to understand every detail. He discovered that she had been protecting him from something he had not known existed. Her death had not been as simple as he thought. There were circumstances, dangers, and secrets she had faced alone, and she had made choices to keep him safe. He felt a mix of sorrow, relief, and understanding. The whispers seemed to respond, surrounding him with a presence that was comforting yet filled with emotion. He realized that she had not abandoned him. Every sign, every sound, every movement had been her way of revealing the truth slowly, giving him the chance to understand without being overwhelmed. Days passed as he pieced together the story from letters, photographs, and subtle clues. He discovered places in the house he had never fully explored, spaces where she had hidden items that told the truth. The attic, the basement, and even small drawers in the kitchen held pieces of the puzzle. Each discovery brought clarity. He began to understand the depth of her love, the risks she had taken, and the strength she had shown. The whispers guided him to the final pieces, a small envelope tucked behind a photo frame in the living room. Inside was a recording she had made before she died. Her voice was soft, filled with emotion, speaking directly to him. She explained the reasons behind her choices, the dangers she had faced, and her love for him that had never wavered. Listening to her words brought tears to his eyes, but also a sense of closure he had never felt. He understood that everything he had experienced in the house had been leading him to this truth. The whispers, the objects, the movements, the letters, and the photographs had all been part of her plan to help him understand and heal. He spent hours replaying the recording, reading the letters again, and examining the photographs. Each piece added depth to the story, revealing the full picture of her courage, her love, and the secrets she had kept to protect him. He felt gratitude mixed with sorrow. He realized that even in death she had been guiding him, ensuring that he could live with knowledge, understanding, and peace. The house that had once seemed haunted now felt sacred. Each room, each object, each whisper was a testament to her presence and her love. He began to see life differently. The pain of loss was still there, but transformed into understanding and appreciation. The whispers continued, but no longer were they frightening. They were comforting, reminding him that he had been loved deeply and that love could transcend absence. He started to take steps to live again, carrying the knowledge of her life, her choices, and her love. He arranged the house with care, keeping the letters, photographs, recordings in places where he could see them and feel connected. He spoke to her daily, telling her about his progress, his thoughts, and his feelings. He did not need responses in words because he felt them in the signs, the whispers, and the subtle changes around him. Friends noticed the transformation. He was more present, calmer, and more reflective. He did not speak much about the supernatural elements, but his aura of peace and connection was evident. He visited old places they had loved, remembering the moments they had shared and feeling her presence in the wind, the light, and the spaces around him. He began to help others with grief, sharing the lessons he had learned about memory, love, and connection. The experience had changed him profoundly, teaching him patience, observation, and acceptance. The whispers had led him to the truth, and the truth had set him free from confusion, anger, and sorrow. The house became a symbol of memory and guidance. Every object and sound reminded him of her life, her courage, and her love. He learned to live with the grief, to honor her memory, and to accept that some mysteries were meant to unfold slowly. He realized that the presence he felt was not a haunting but a guiding force, a way for her to communicate beyond the limitations of life and death. Over time, he felt lighter, more peaceful, and more connected to the world around him. The whispers had served their purpose, revealing secrets, offering guidance, and providing closure. He carried the knowledge of her choices and the lessons she had left behind into every part of his life. The understanding he gained allowed him to embrace life again, to honor her memory, and to cherish the love they had shared. He no longer feared the whispers, the empty rooms, or the shadows. They had become reminders of the enduring power of love, the importance of patience, and the strength found in memory. The journey had been long and filled with emotion, but it had led him to the truth. The house was no longer a place of sorrow, but a place of connection, understanding, and peace. Each day, he felt her presence in the soft sounds, the objects, and the memories. He knew that she had guided him to the truth, and in knowing it, he had found a sense of closure, comfort, and the ability to live fully while honoring her life and love. The whispers, once mysterious and frightening, had become a source of guidance and healing. The letters, photographs, and recordings revealed her choices and her love in a way he could finally understand. He felt grateful, peaceful, and connected, carrying the lessons forward into the rest of his life. After discovering the letters, photographs, and recordings, he felt a sense of clarity he had never known. The whispers had led him to the truth, revealing what she had faced and the choices she had made to protect him. Each item he examined helped him understand her courage, her love, and her life beyond what he had known. He spent long hours revisiting memories, listening to the recordings, reading the letters, and studying photographs. The house no longer felt empty. It was filled with the traces of her life and presence. Each corner held a story, a whisper of the love they had shared. He began to talk to her as if she were right beside him, sharing his thoughts, fears, and hopes. The whispers seemed to respond in subtle ways, the movement of objects or the gentle shift of air affirming that he was not alone. He realized that the journey had been as much about understanding her as it was about understanding himself. He had learned patience, observation, and acceptance. The house had become a sanctuary, a place where memories and love were tangible in ways that words could not fully describe. He started taking walks in the garden where she had planted flowers. Each bloom reminded him of her care, her attention, and the beauty she had created in their life together. He would pause to touch the petals, feeling a connection to her spirit and the love that still lingered. The whispers continued, but now they brought comfort rather than fear. He would follow them to objects or letters that offered insight into her life and their shared experiences. Sometimes a book would be open on a table where he had not left it, or a photograph would be placed so he could see it clearly. These small signs gave him a sense of connection and reassurance. He began writing down his reflections, his conversations with her, and the lessons he had learned. Each entry helped him process his grief and transform it into understanding and appreciation. He realized that love had not ended. It had changed form, guiding him gently toward acceptance and healing. Over time, he felt ready to reconnect with the world outside the house. He began visiting friends, sharing stories of their life together, and finding joy in memories rather than only in sorrow. He kept the house as a place of remembrance, a space where her presence was felt in whispers, letters, and objects, but he also started living fully in the present. The journey had taught him that grief was not something to escape from, but a path to deeper understanding. He learned to see the whispers and signs not as haunting, but as a continuation of her love, a guide that had helped him navigate the pain of loss. Each day, he would spend time in different parts of the house, feeling her presence and reflecting on the life they had shared. The letters, recordings, and photographs became treasures he could turn to whenever he needed comfort or guidance. He realized that her love had been steady and unwavering, even in absence. The house had become a living testament to their life together, filled with memories and moments that continued to teach him about patience, compassion, and enduring love. He felt gratitude for the time they had shared and for the care she had taken to leave messages that guided him through grief. The whispers, once a source of fear and confusion, had become symbols of connection and healing. He could feel her near in the smallest details, a soft movement, a subtle change, a sense of warmth that reminded him he was not alone. He began to find joy in small things again, laughter in memories, and comfort in the patterns of life that continued around him. The process of discovering the truth had allowed him to forgive himself, to let go of regrets, and to embrace life with renewed understanding. He felt a sense of closure that had once seemed impossible, knowing that she had acted out of love and care for him, even in difficult circumstances. As days turned into weeks, he noticed that the house had transformed along with him. It was no longer a place of loneliness, but of connection, memory, and peace. Every room carried traces of her, each object a reminder of her presence and their life together. He could sit quietly in the living room, the garden, or the attic, and feel her guiding him gently through thoughts and emotions. He began to share the story of his experiences with others, not in a way that was frightening, but as lessons about love, memory, and connection. He spoke about the importance of paying attention to small signs, cherishing moments, and holding on to the love that endures beyond absence. The house became a place where he could live fully while keeping her memory alive. He continued to document every detail, creating a journal that held the story of their shared life and the guidance she had left behind. The whispers, the movements of objects, the letters, and the recordings were all part of a path that had led him to understanding, peace, and acceptance. He could now move through each day with a sense of calm, knowing that grief had transformed into love and connection rather than only sorrow. He found that he could smile at memories without pain, speak of their life together with warmth, and honor her presence in every small way. He felt a quiet strength, a sense of purpose, and the ability to live fully while remembering and cherishing her. The journey had been long, emotional, and sometimes overwhelming, but it had brought him to a place of closure and peace. He had discovered that love does not end with death, that presence can continue in subtle and meaningful ways, and that understanding and healing are possible even after great loss. The whispers had led him to the truth. The objects and letters had revealed her courage and love, and the recordings had given him the sound of her voice to hold on to forever. He knew that she would always be with him in memory, in the small signs, and in the love that continued to guide him. The house, once a place of sorrow, had become a sanctuary of memory and connection. He lived there with a sense of gratitude, peace, and hope, carrying the lessons, love, and whispers forward into the rest of his life. Each day, he remembered her, spoke to her, and felt her presence in ways that filled him with comfort and understanding. He understood that life would continue, that grief and love were intertwined, and that the traces of those we love can guide us even when they are gone. In this way, he found the courage to live, the peace to remember, and the love to honor the life they had shared together. Even after finding closure, he felt that her presence was still around him in subtle ways. The whispers, soft and gentle, continued to appear in moments of reflection or when he was alone. He began to notice patterns in them, almost as if they were guiding him toward understanding more about himself and life beyond grief. He spent mornings sitting in the garden where she had planted flowers, feeling the warmth of sunlight on his face and imagining her beside him. He spoke aloud to her about the small details of his day, the people he met, and the changes he was making in his life. Each time he did this, he felt a small shift in the air, a sense that she was listening and approving of the way he was learning to live again. He began to document these experiences in a new journal, not just the whispers or objects, but his thoughts, reflections, and personal growth. Writing brought clarity, a way to process emotions that had been suppressed for too long. The house, once a place filled with sorrow and loss, now felt alive in a different way. The shadows seemed less daunting, the corners warmer, and the quiet more comforting. He could walk through every room without fear, sensing the traces of her life as reminders rather than sources of grief. He also began to reconnect with people he had distanced himself from. Visits from friends and neighbors felt more meaningful now, as he carried the strength and understanding he had gained. He shared stories of his life with her, memories that were joyful, funny, or full of love, keeping her spirit alive through words and remembrance. One afternoon, while exploring the attic once again, he noticed an old box that had been tucked away. Inside were items he had not fully examined before. Letters, photographs, and small keepsakes revealed additional layers of their shared life. Some letters spoke of dreams they had not fulfilled, while others contained small jokes, moments of humor, and expressions of love. He laughed softly as he read, feeling her presence in the words. The whispers came as he sorted through the box, leading him to particular photographs and notes that he had missed. It was as if she wanted him to experience them fully, to remember her completely. Each discovery brought a mixture of joy and sorrow, but the sorrow was lighter now, tempered by understanding. He spent weeks exploring each item, reading, listening, and reflecting. The recordings of her voice became a source of comfort. He could hear her laugh, her tone gentle, filled with warmth and care. Listening to her words allowed him to feel her guidance in ways that were almost tangible. He began to consider the lessons they had shared, the choices she had made, and how they could influence his life moving forward. The whispers and signs continued, subtle and persistent. He learned to recognize them as part of a rhythm, guiding him through moments of indecision, uncertainty, or doubt. They reminded him to cherish memories, make thoughtful choices, and embrace life even in the absence of someone so important. He started creating small rituals to honor her memory. Mornings in the garden, evenings by the fireplace, and quiet moments in the attic became times of reflection and connection. Each ritual reinforced his bond with her and reminded him of the depth of their love. The house, the garden, and the objects within became more than spaces or belongings. They were expressions of their shared history and reminders of the lessons she had left behind. He began to focus on helping others, using the strength he had gained from this journey to support friends or strangers facing grief and loss. He spoke about memory, love, and connection, sharing how small signs and personal reflection could guide someone through sorrow. Over time, he noticed changes in himself. The weight of grief had lessened, replaced by a quiet understanding and a sense of purpose. He could smile at memories without pain, speak of her without tears, and feel her presence without fear. The house was no longer a place of haunting, but a sanctuary of connection and learning. He continued to write in his journals, capturing the whispers, discoveries, and his reflections on life. Each entry became a record of his healing, growth, and the ongoing presence of love in his life. He began to recognize that her guidance, through whispers and signs, was teaching him resilience, compassion, and awareness. He could face challenges with a sense of calm, knowing that her lessons and love were always with him. One quiet evening, he decided to play the recordings of her voice while sitting in the living room. He listened carefully, letting her words fill the room, her tone and expressions resonating with him deeply. It was a moment of connection beyond grief, a bridge between life and memory, presence and absence. He felt a sense of gratitude for the time they had shared, for the love that endured, and for the guidance that continued through whispers and signs. The house, once a place of solitude and sadness, had become a space of learning, reflection, and quiet joy. He realized that life was full of layers, memories, and lessons, and that grief was part of a larger journey of love and understanding. He embraced the idea that connections do not end with death, that love leaves traces, and that presence can manifest in subtle ways that guide, teach, and comfort. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. He continued his rituals, journaling, and reflections. The whispers never became overwhelming but remained gentle reminders of her presence. Each day brought moments of insight, clarity, and peace. He felt empowered to live fully while honoring the memory and love of someone who had shaped his life profoundly. Over time, he noticed that he no longer felt the emptiness that had consumed him for years. The house, the garden, the attic, and the objects within were filled with the energy of her memory and the guidance she had left behind. He had learned to balance memory and presence, grief and understanding, absence and connection. The journey had transformed him, teaching him that love endures, guidance can come in subtle ways, and closure is possible even after profound loss. He spent his days sharing stories, reflecting, and living with intention. He smiled more often, laughed at memories, and felt her presence in every soft sound, movement, and object. The whispers, once mysterious and unsettling, had become symbols of enduring love and guidance. He knew that she would always be a part of him, that the lessons she had left behind would continue to guide him, and that the connection they shared could never be broken. He faced each day with gratitude, awareness, and love, carrying her memory, the whispers, and the lessons into every aspect of his life. He had learned to live with grief transformed into understanding, sorrow softened by love, and absence replaced by connection. The journey had been long, emotional, and at times difficult, but it had led him to a place of peace, clarity, and enduring love. He realized that life continues, that love persists, and that the presence of someone we cherish can guide, teach, and comfort us in ways we cannot always see. Each whisper, each small movement, each object was a reminder that love endures and that the memories we hold can continue to shape and guide our lives.